If you like to laugh, and who doesn't, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to My Funny House with the Powell brothers. Frank Powell is a real estate broker who was born and raised in San Diego, along with Frank's brother Mark, a real estate broker who also lives in San Diego. Each week, the Powell brothers bring in a special guest comedian to share hilarious real estate stories so you can learn what can go really right and what can go really wrong with home improvements and home ownership. So now, let's get into it. With My Funny House, here are your hosts, Frank and Mark Powell on The Answer San Diego.
Good morning, San Diego. Happy Saturday morning here in San Diego. We are so lucky to live in this beautiful city. Right now, I'm going to introduce somebody who's very important on this show. He's my brother and my partner, Frank Powell, also a real estate broker.
Good morning. This is Frank Powell, and I'm going to introduce my brother because he didn't say who he was. First guy talking with Mark Powell, and we owned the PowellBrothersRealty.com, Discovery Property Group. And today we have probably our favorite co-host, wouldn't you think?
He's one of our favorite. He's our co-host.
He is our co-host, and he's good.
I'm taking over today.
He's awesome. This is James Schrader coming to you live here in the studio.
Yay.
Yeah, let's hear the cheering. A very good comedian, very funny actor. This guy is a father and a human sex symbol, according to him. He's also according to him. And if you want to really look him up, he's also the face for the Dr. Squatch soap that we all know you for, but you are making big gains in other things, and you're spreading all over the place. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. This is I'm excited to be here again. It's always fun to talk about houses and learn things I never knew about things I can't afford yet.
Oh, we're going to learn something really important today. We're going to learn about something called escrow. Escrow.
Other than, I think, a really good name for a dog who a realtor owns, escrow.
Escrow would be a good dog's name. It'd be a good dog's name. So, but to help us do this, we have one of the country's foremost expert on escrow, Ash Nassery. Say hello, Ash.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mark and Frank.
Good. Ash is in studio with us. Well, Mark and I are sharing a microphone, so if my voice sounds weird, it's because I don't want to be lip to lip with my brother. So we're passing the mic back and forth. So Mark, take it over. Let's hear what escrow is. People talk about escrow, but everyone thinks they know what escrow is, but they're kind of embarrassed to ask, including agents. Like, how would you explain it, and what is it?
Ash, can you tell us what's escrow?
Honestly, I really don't know either at this point. I'm afraid to ask.
You wear a lot of hats. Yeah, we use Ash as our medium when somebody's upset and the fees are too high. We go, call the escrow officer.
Well, Ash, can you explain to us really what do you do? What is escrow?
Well, essentially, escrow is a middle person entity that holds the funds in a real estate transaction. So when a buyer writes an offer on a purchase contract, they have to put some money into escrow in good faith to basically assure the seller that they're going to perform, not back out. And if they do breach the contract, the seller would be entitled to that. So escrow handles all the money. We interpret the contract. We basically perform legal services in a sense. And at the end of the transaction, we issue checks to everybody.
We like those checks. Okay, so Ash, I'm going to ask you something. This is how I explain escrow. I really need to know. You can even do it on air if I'm explaining it correctly. The person that doesn't know escrow, here's what I say. Maybe the people out there can listen as well. An escrow would be something like if you want to sell a bicycle, right? And you have a bike and this guy that you don't know has the cash to buy it, but you make conditions like, hey, I want to go check out this bike and make sure that it works well. So I want to get it inspected and I want to get a bike expert to look at it because you're asking a lot of money. And the guy goes, well, I don't want to give you the bike because what if you take it and run? So you hire a mutual person. This guy will say, hey, I'll hold the money and I'll take the bike and we'll get all the things that you want done with the bike to ensure that it's okay. And then when the money comes to me, I'll give it to the buyer and the bike I'll give to the seller. Is that reasonable?
I think so. I think the bike is a really good analogy for the money. Here in this, what we do is we hold the money, essentially.
It's kind of like every movie from the 80s, whenever there was like a fight or something we're all betting on, and there was always the one guy that's like collecting the money from everybody.
So he's
right?
a bookie.
Remember? Yeah, kind of. Like he's holding the money and everyone's like, we kind of trust Kyle. Like whatever, whoever that guy's name is. Like he holds the money and he's always got like cash stuck in each finger, right? And that's like, is someone's money and this is someone else's, I'll hold it. And then at the end of the fight, whatever, He's like, all right, you get this, you get this, you get that. Everyone's happy.
Like Fight Club. You ever see that?
I don't think they took bets though. They just destroyed something beautiful.
Is that why Ash makes us kiss his ring every time we go into the office?
Well, yeah. Did you see the cigar smoke? The cigar smoke going on in that weird office he has?
Very, very thick. It's always dark too.
You have to get to 3 doors to get to his office.
Yeah, and the security guards too. They frisk you.
That's right.
Even though we made it sound like it's a sketchy transaction, this is something that happens. It's like totally.
You have to have it.
You have to have it.
He makes sure everybody is secure and everybody does what they say they're going to do. But Ash, can you explain to me what an escrow agent is or an escrow officer?
The escrow agent or the officer is essentially the person in charge of the file. So you're right. That person has to be trusted. And the key is that the person has to be neutral. Neutrality means that you're loyal and honest to both sides. Those are the fiduciary duties. And you have to keep in mind that when escrow doesn't have mutual instructions, we basically pause like a deer in headlights. And we can't do anything until both sides come to agreement again.
I like the word you use, and this is a word that was always difficult for me to remember, fiduciary, a fiduciary responsibility. So what that means out there is that a real estate agent or an escrow officer has the responsibility of doing what's absolutely best for their client above the needs of the realtor or the escrow officer. So if you have an offer that, let's say you're going to make a 3% profit on the agent,
your commission,
right? But another offer comes in that's better for the agent, but you're only making it ends up being a 1% commission. Let's say if you double end it, you have to do what's best always for the client.
That's fiduciary,
and that is a legal responsibility.
Right.
And that so when you hear the word fiduciary, it's bound with legal
ramifications.
Correct.
Just to touch on that, if you're in a situation, if you're buying a house or selling a house and you suspect that like, hey, like we got an offer, but there's another one, you suspect, because I have a buddy that went through a thing where like he put an offer in and they were like right before the close. And then he felt like his guy or the other person's guy like literally screwed it up on purpose because another one came in, even though they were already like signing things and whatever. Yes. Like, what do you do? This is kind of off topic, but like if you think something's weird is going on with your person, what do you do?
Well, the formal thing you do is you make a ethics complaint violation, and inside like the San Diego Association of Realtors, there is a group of people. Mark was sitting on it, right? Tell them what they do.
Well, when you become a real estate agent, you're not a realtor. So a realtor has a higher standard. They have an ethics
code of ethics.
They have a code of ethics that they abide by, and anybody who violates that code of ethics
can be fined,
and they can be reprimanded too. They get formal letters of how do you say that word, Frank?
Reprimand. Yeah.
Yeah, reprimand. Correct.
Or suspended or revoked. It can take their license.
Yeah, it can suspend it, cancel it, or revoke it. So anyways, there are processes to handle those situations. But what we found works really well is we just take them to Ash and put them in that room, remember? And Ash takes care of them.
But you're right. It's very difficult to find if an agent does that because, listen, there's bad apples in every organization, and that is done. But it's very hard to prove because you don't get to see the other person's offer, because it's confidential.
I want to know one thing. How much does escrow cost? Because people think this may be prohibitive, too expensive for.
How do you explain the fees? What's the fee structure in escrow, and why do they have to pay these fees?
Well, it's not very sexy, but just like anybody else, like a lawyer or a dentist, we have to get paid for what we do, and this industry, whether it's title insurance or escrow, it's kind of based on a tiered system. The higher the liability or the sales price, the higher the fee. Mm-hmm. Because presumably if something goes wrong, then you can get exposed and get sued for more money.
Okay, let me ask Ash a question. Ash, I've had people who are confused because they don't know the difference between an escrow and an escrow account, because after they buy the house, there's something called an escrow account. Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, sure. The way I explain it is once my job is done and I close the deal and you get the keys, I'm done. I mean, you can always come back and ask questions, but I'm not going to hold your money. The escrow account that you have when you have a mortgage is with your bank if you chose a loan where they pay for your insurance and taxes as sort of a courtesy.
Oh, that's nice. Another thing is we give you what's called the EMD, the earnest money deposit. And what people don't know is when you give that to escrow, they actually cash it. So that check has to be good.
What do you mean they cash it?
Well, the escrow officer cashes it in the bank, and now they hold the bank, so they have to take it out of their account. If something happens during the transaction and the deal doesn't go through, escrow writes a separate check back to the person that has the earnest money.
Yes, assuming the parties have, remember, come to an agreement, because
Correct.
we can't do anything without both sides agreeing.
Right, so and that's why they call it a bilateral contract, because you need both sides to say, go
Well,
ahead
do
and
things
release the
ever go
money.
wrong, Ash? Do things ever go wrong in escrow?
Oh, my God.
I'm going to make him an offer again.
Get seller's remorse, they get buyer's remorse, people die.
What about when they look at those fees? Because what I get is like, what is this charge I'm getting?
Right.
Like, what besides the main charge being the commission, what's a fee that you think is the most debatable, and how do you handle that?
Well, the funny thing is, it seems like everyone's kind of firm on their fees, so the last person to shake down is the escrow company. So you're going to have to work with people. Absolutely. We work with people. If then you have special needs and they need reductions in price, we can work with them. So long as we do it with both sides.
So you recommend that if somebody is selling a house, they definitely understand the escrow process.
Absolutely. They should always know what's going to happen. And they should really prepare themselves for wire fraud, which is a really big thing. That happens
What is
right now.
wire fraud?
Okay, so we have seen industries, and we've seen it in malware, and we've seen big pipelines being destroyed by people that want to shut things down. There's also a chance where the escrow money can be stolen.
How?
I'm going to ask Ash, what do the fraudulent people do to steal that money? How do they actually steal it? Because there's been cases where $300,000 has been stolen from a person putting it down and stealing it in between the time they sent it to the time it gets to the escrow. They get somebody in between to con them into sending them. How does that work, and how do you prevent it?
Well, and then one more thing. Yeah. How do you prevent it? What do you do to prevent that from happening?
Sure thing. So to be clear, the money never gets taken out of escrow. So once escrow receives it, it's safe and secure. Right. But what criminals do is they hack emails, they lie in wait, and one of the techniques they use is when a buyer first goes into contract, before they've had a chance to deposit their money, they try to pose as escrow.
How do they do that? Give us the steps, because this is happening right now. We need to know. The people need to know.
Sure thing. Well, a lot of times, unfortunately, it starts with realtors that have Gmail, Yahoo, and Hotmail accounts with easy passwords.
Okay.
So the criminal lies in wait. They read the agent's emails. They find out everything. They read the contract. They have the buyer's email. And then they use the hacked email to reach out to the buyer and say, hey, I am the escrow company. Here are my wire instructions.
Okay, is that appropriate for the escrow to reach out to the buyer? Like, how do they know it's not? Eventually, they have to give you the money. So how do they know fraud versus the real guy, Ash's company or another? How do you determine that?
Well, that's the first thing we do at iNational Escrow is we contact the buyer, we get their information, we send them an encrypted email with the password, and they can only see our wire instructions if they actually call us.
Okay, good.
And once they call us, we ask them secure questions. We ensure it's the buyer, not the hacker. And then we go through the process and we say, look, this is our bank account. It's the only account that we have. It never changes. Remember this. And can you read it back to me, etc. And we also tell them that throughout the transaction, be on the lookout for suspicious emails. And most importantly, always call escrow before you send the money to confirm the bank information.
So I'm going to have to change my password because I've been using password for my.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Is that bad?
No,
that's
that's
very
ridiculous.
2019.
Come on, Mark. I use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You don't use that one?
James, what should we use as a password? Seriously. James, give us some good password suggestions, okay?
The first girl you kissed, first name. The first girl you slept with, last name.
Oh, God.
And then your daughter's birthday.
Oh,
Because if anyone can guess that, it's probably your wife, and she has the money anyways, so it's fine.
Good, you're right. That's good.
that is so true. Hey, Ash, just to bring us back in line here, how does somebody select an escrow company? Yeah, there's all sorts of different ways, but what's the most common way to select an escrow company and why?
And to follow up that question, what does one escrow do that another escrow can't? Like, what makes you superior? Because
And I would say, how do you research escrow companies?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what do you look for in an escrow company? And
yeah.
Well, those are all great questions. So essentially, the buyer and seller have a right to negotiate escrow and title services. But the way the industry works is a lot of times the seller's agent has the relationship. They refer the company to the seller, and the seller almost always picks who the company is going to be. But I have seen buyer's agents also navigate that pretty well and select their company of choice. Just like anything else, when you're choosing someone, you want to ask for referrals. You want to ask your network. You want to ask your realtor. You can also go online and read about the company, check out their website, maybe go on Yelp and see what kind of reviews they have.
That's a great idea. Ash, here's something we get.
Yeah.
I tell people an escrow closing is the same as a construction project closing. It never closes on the date that the construction or the general contractor says. So let's say you're remodeling your kitchen. The guy says, we could get this done in 3 months. 6 months later, you're still waiting for it to close. Now with escrow, I basically tell them the same thing. It's not typically 30 days or 31 days. So what are some of the things that prevent an escrow from closing?
Well, almost always there's two main things. The majority of the time, if the buyer is getting a loan and their lender still needs more information from them or documents to go to loan docs, and these days lenders are very busy with low rates, that's the most common reason. And occasionally, even on a cash deal, which almost always closes on time, if the condition of the property is not to the buyer's level that they want, sometimes that delays closing and seller has to finish repairs.
Another thing is that we have clients that can't always go out to get things notarized. Does your company provide a service that goes to the house? Because I think it does, and that's why.
We have access to mobile notaries that go out and make things easy to explain the documents. They get them notarized and they deliver them back to escrow.
And one thing I got to do a shout out for Ash and his company at iNational is that they did. I just closed a house, and the lady selling the house was in a very small village located in France, and you figured out how to get her notarized in international continent of France and close the deal even smoother than most of my deals have closed.
And he did it all in French.
Did you do it in French?
That was pretty tricky, yeah, because I had to use Google Translate.
But that was awesome. So if you're an international buyer out there and you're in a different country and you want to buy and you have to go through an escrow, iNational is a good place to start because they are global.
I have a question for Ash or James or anybody who wants to answer here. Ash, can you explain what a seller's credit is or a buyer's credit is? Because it's typically done through escrow, but there's certain things you can and cannot do. Can you explain that process a little bit?
Well, sure. I mean, most often when a buyer finds something wrong with the property and the seller acknowledges it, they kind of determine how much it would cost to fix it. And the easiest way to avoid figuring out which vendor is going to go do the work, the buyer's plumber or the seller's, what they just often decide to do is say, okay, this job is going to cost $3,000. Let's just give a credit from the seller to the buyer. And then the $3,000 goes towards the closing costs. And it reduces how much money the buyer has to bring in at closing.
Well, what are closing costs? What is that? What is that whole thing?
What is the percentage of a closing cost? Let's take an average $800,000 house.
Well, you're going to have, if it's a cash deal, you're going to pay a commission, probably 5 to 6%. You're going to pay what's left of the property taxes or the HOA maybe on a prorated basis. So sellers often get a credit for things they've already paid for at close of escrow. You're going to have title insurance costs and escrow costs and some government costs too for recording.
And you help them also with their taxes because sometimes the taxes aren't paid or they are paid, so you adjust that, right? So sometimes they get what's called a supplementary tax or supplemental tax bill. And can you explain that? Like They're going to call me and go, hey, I got this weird tax. I thought we were done with that escrow and I have to pay more or I got a check.
Sure, that happens often because say the seller bought the property at $300,000 and now it's worth $1 million. When the buyer closes escrow, the tax prorations are based on the seller's tax rate. But the county at close of escrow assesses the property at $1 million, and they're going to send a bill to the buyer for the difference. And it's good for the buyers to have a heads up about that so they can save for it.
Now, what if the buyer is like foreign? So like they don't live in California or they're even in a different state or a different country. Like, how do you guys manage the taxes for other countries or things like that, or help facilitate that, or how does that work?
So it's important to note escrow is not a CPA or a tax professional. And the way to answer your question, the way this great country is set up is we want all people from all over the world to bring their money here. So we make it very easy. You can buy whatever you want here, no problem. But if you go to sell it and you're not a U.S. citizen or a green card holder, permanent resident, then you're going to get taxed all to hell.
Oh, wow. Okay, they get you either way, coming in or going out.
So if you live, let's say you live in Bangladesh, just whatever. Can somebody from Bangladesh put an offer in on a house in San Diego and just buy it and go, I own a house in San Diego now?
Absolutely. There's no issue with that.
But does it work the same way? Is it reciprocity? Can I buy a house in like the Philippines if I wanted to?
Well, you're going to have to ask an escrow company in the Philippines about that.
Yeah, the answer is America's pretty good at selling foreigners American property. So
That's true.
That separates us because...
But I'm pretty sure that for that average $800,000 house you spoke of, you can buy an entire town or mountain.
Exactly. Yeah.
In most,
Buy a village,
a lot of other
you know?
places.
Hey Ash, have you ever had a person buy an island or something like that, or anything? What's the weirdest property that you ever had to deal with? Like kind of bizarre situation.
Well, I don't come across many bizarre things. One of the things that we don't do is we don't handle things. So we don't, for example, the bicycle example, we don't do bicycles, boats, yachts, furniture, things like that. Those are holding escrows, and that's a whole separate process.
Do you handle escrows like, let's say, in commercial buildings, the person has money, they have 2 boats and a helicopter they want to trade for the building? Do you guys handle those kind of cases?
So we would do the building, but we wouldn't do the helicopter and the other items because those are things.
Right. Well, you could do that in the commercial world. You can't do it in the residential world. You can actually change. It's almost like a weird 1031 exchange.
Well, hold on. That's a good question. Ash, can you explain what you work with 1031 exchange, but what is that? What is a 1031 exchange? Because people use that term all the time.
Sure thing. So a 1031 exchange is when someone has a capital gain profit on an investment property and they want to sell it and they don't want to pay taxes on it. So what they do is they go and buy another property for similar price or higher, and they defer the taxes.
Okay, so that's good. That's a good play on real estate. So if you have 2 houses and you sell them both, and you want to get an apartment building, and let's say you want to take the $1 million and put that $1 million. You only bought the house for $100,000, and you take that $1 million and you put it in a
Frank, I
1031
think that's a
exchange.
game you're playing, Monopoly. We were playing that last night.
That's right.
But yes, that it does check out though. Yes, if you have the 2 properties, you sell the 2, you roll that money, those capital gains into one property. That way you don't have to pay the taxes between that transaction. And so maybe someday when you sell the apartment building, pretty much whenever you sell it and keep it, that's when they're coming after you.
James, you're not only a sex symbol, but you're also really good at real estate. Maybe we're going to sign you up to be one of our... Yeah, he's good. He's
He answered the question.
He did answer the question. Ash, you're
gonna be the
fired. James, you're our new escrow officer.
I'll hold anyone's money, but I did not graduate college, so
listen,
it should
But you
all
know
be
what? It is very similar to Monopoly.
We're coming to a close. That was so fast. I love you guys. Thank you so much, Ash, for coming in studio.
My pleasure.
James, we love you too. You're always
Thanks for
welcome
having
back.
me.
In fact, we're going to have you back next week. And so how do we get in touch with Ash? Go ahead, Ash. How do we get in touch with
Well,
you?
you can call our office. You can go to inational.com or call our office at 858-587-4814. Or you can open an escrow at opening@inational.com.
And you can call the Powell brothers because we'll put you right in touch with you. James, how do we get a hold of you?
JamesSchrader.com. Go there, launching the T-shirts if you can see them on the guys right here. I brought them. I didn't expect this. This wasn't the plan.
Ta-da!
But we're all matching in our shirts. Those are launching soon. JamesSchrader.com and any YouTube.
And get your merch. And go ahead, tell us how to get in hold with the Powell brothers.
You can get a hold of the Powell brothers by phone at 858-922-7725 or hit us up at powellbrothersrealty.com.
All right, San Diego, thanks so much for joining us on another crazy topic, escrow. Next week, we'll have another topic with James will come back and visit us, we hope.
I hope James comes
Yeah,
back.
James, coming back. Come back and stay with us. Ash, thank you so much. San Diego, have a good Saturday. Give us a call if you need us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for joining us today for My Funny House with the Powell Brothers, right here on The Answer San Diego. Join us next week as the Powell Brothers bring you more funny stories of what can go really right and what can go really wrong with home improvements and home ownership, and bring the laughs to you with yet another hilarious guest comedian. To find out more about the Powell Brothers, be sure to check out their website at powellbrothersrealty.com, or you can visit myfunnyhouse.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week for My Funny House on The Answer San Diego.